The little girl was adored by her mother's siblings, who saw her as their precious little warrior. Born a full 8 weeks earlier than expected, she had already defied the odds, capturing the hearts of everyone around her. Her strength and resilience became a source of inspiration for the family, who showered her with endless love and care. But one fateful night, as the household drifted into a deep, peaceful slumber, something unimaginable and utterly horrifying occurred. In the quiet darkness, the tiny, defenseless girl, who had already overcome so much, was faced with an unspeakable terror that no one could.
And we want to warn you, this story includes some disturbing details.
To be completely honest, this is one of the most horrifying and distressing cases I've ever had to discuss. I feel it's only fair to warn you up front that what you're about to hear might be incredibly difficult to process, especially for those with a sensitive heart or a faint disposition.
She couldn't hold herself up. And she started making a gurgling sound.
Was she breathing normally?
No,
Did you notice any bleeding?
just a little around her nose and mouth.
How did she feel when you touched her skin?
She was crazy.
Emmelie Barringer was not just another child. She was a miracle, a symbol of resilience, and the light of her family. Born on the sacred Thanksgiving Day of 2015, Emmelie arrived in the world 8 weeks earlier than expected, catching her family by surprise and filling their hearts with both concern and admiration. Her mother, Amanda Adkins, had been overjoyed at the thought of welcoming another child, and Emmelee's arrival, though premature, quickly proved to be a blessing in disguise. From the moment she was born, Emmelie displayed a strength that earned her the nickname Little Warrior. Despite her early arrival, she thrived, charming everyone she met with her radiant smile and gentle spirit. She was an exceptionally cheerful baby, rarely crying and always bringing joy to those around her. Her siblings adored her, and Emmelie reciprocated that love tenfold. She had 3 older brothers, Nathaniel, 7, Cameron, 2, and a sister, Carly, 6, who became her playmates and protectors. Emmelie loved spending time with them, her giggles filling the house with warmth. By the time she was 10 months old, Emmelie had started taking her first wobbly steps and babbling her first words. Every milestone, no matter how small, was celebrated with immense pride by her family. She was the heart of their home, the glue that held them together through life's challenges. In the summer of 2016, Amanda made a decision that she believed would change their lives for the better. Wanting to provide a safer and more peaceful environment for her children, she decided to move the family from their home in suburban Baltimore, Maryland, to the quiet countryside of West Virginia. The bustling suburbs, while familiar, were far from ideal for raising children. Amanda longed for a fresh start, a place where her kids could grow up surrounded by rolling hills and picturesque landscapes. Shortly after settling in West Virginia, Amanda met a man named Benjamin Taylor, affectionately called Benji by those who knew him. Benji was everything Amanda thought she wanted: charming, attentive, and seemingly perfect. He was quick to shower Amanda with affection and took a genuine interest in her children. It wasn't long before Amanda fell for him completely. She saw him as her Prince Charming, a man who could complete their family and provide the love and stability she had always dreamed of. Benji seemed too good to be true. He spent all his free time with Amanda and her kids, going out of his way to bond with them. He acted as though he had been a part of their family forever, seamlessly integrating himself into their daily lives. Amanda was over the moon, convinced she had found the man of her dreams. In August 2016, Benji posted a photo on his Facebook page of himself and Amanda kissing, making their relationship official. A few weeks later, on September 7th, he updated his relationship status to confirm he was with Amanda Adkins. But as time went on, cracks began to appear in Benji's perfect facade. Unknown to Amanda, Benji had a troubled past. He had a criminal record, including convictions for theft and multiple violations of his parole. However, blinded by love and his apparent devotion, Amanda chose to believe in the man he presented himself to be. By the fall of 2016, Benji had moved in with Amanda and her children, becoming a full-time part of their lives. On the night of October 2016, Amanda and her 3 older children went to bed early, around 9 p.m., leaving Emmelie asleep in her crib. Benji stayed up, saying he wasn't tired. At some point during the night, he went to the basement, claiming he wanted to do some laundry while listening to music. He also brought Emmelie downstairs with him, placing her on a swing in the living room before eventually carrying her down to the basement. Amanda woke up around 4 a.m., feeling an unexplainable sense of unease. She instinctively checked Emmeli's crib, only to find it empty. Panic began to set in when she noticed Benji wasn't in bed either. Assuming they had both fallen asleep somewhere downstairs, perhaps Emmelie in her swing and Benji on the couch, Amanda got up to check. She searched the living room, but neither Emmelie nor Benji was there. Her anxiety grew as she realized something wasn't right. She decided to head down to the basement, remembering that Benji had gone there earlier. What Amanda saw next would haunt her for the rest of her life. In the dimly lit basement, Amanda found Benji kneeling on the floor, partially undressed. Her heart sank as she noticed Emmelie lying beneath him, her tiny body cold and still. The baby's face was bloodied, and she wasn't moving. Benji's pants were undone, and his calm demeanor in the face of such horror was utterly chilling. Amanda's voice trembled as she asked, "What are you doing?" Benji, unfazed, replied with an eerie calmness, "I'm just cleaning up Emmelie." Amanda's confusion turned to horror as she took in the full scene. The absurdity of his response was drowned out by the overwhelming realization that something was terribly wrong. Emmeli's fragile frame was covered in blood, and strange gurgling sounds came from her throat. Amanda rushed to her daughter, scooping her into her arms. Emmeli's body was cold as ice, her face unrecognizable through the blood. Tears streamed down Amanda's face as she screamed at Benji, slapping him with all her strength. "What have you done? What have you done?" she cried, her voice echoing through the basement. Amanda bolted up the stairs, her heart racing and her hands trembling uncontrollably as she snatched her phone and dialed 911. Her voice cracked with panic and anguish as she tried to explain the horror unfolding in her home. My baby girl, she's bleeding. She's bleeding from down there," Amanda sobbed into the phone, her words choking in her throat. "That bastard, he did something to her." "I know it," she screamed, her voice a mixture of desperation and fury. The dispatcher on the other end tried to calm her, asking her to repeat herself, but Amanda could barely form coherent sentences. She kept crying, "That monster? He hurt my baby girl." The recording of Amanda's call captured every ounce of her agony and rage. In the background, her voice echoed as she screamed at Benji. "What did you do? What did you do to her? You're a monster, an inhuman monster. Why is she naked?" Her raw, unfiltered pain reverberated through the call, painting a haunting picture of the unimaginable scene she had just witnessed. Within minutes, emergency responders arrived at the modest house on Meadowlark Lane in Ripley, West Virginia. The sight that greeted them on the porch was one of pure devastation. Amanda stood there, cradling little Emmeli's limp, bloodied body in her arms, her tears falling uncontrollably onto the lifeless child. Emmeli's face was pale, her tiny frame soaked in blood. Amanda, desperate for someone to save her baby, pleaded with the paramedics, her words tumbling out in broken sobs. Inside the house, officers confronted Benji. He appeared eerily calm, his demeanor almost detached from the chaos around him. When the police ordered him to lift his shirt, they saw a large, unmistakable bloodstain on his torso. Benji muttered a weak excuse, claiming the blood must have gotten on him when he carried Emmelie. But the officers also noticed blood on his thighs, evidence that directly tied him to Emmeli's horrific injuries. Emmelie was rushed to a hospital in Charleston, where doctors worked tirelessly to save her. The extent of her injuries, however, was catastrophic. She had suffered massive internal bleeding and severe head trauma. Despite every effort, the medical team delivered the heartbreaking news. Emmelie was brain dead. Amanda, overwhelmed with grief, stayed by her daughter's side, holding her tiny hand and whispering words of love and comfort. 2 days later, on October 5, 2016, Amanda made the agonizing decision to take Emmelie off life support. Her little warrior was gone. The doctors informed police that Emmeli's injuries were consistent with a violent assault. The autopsy later confirmed their worst fears. Emmelie had suffered extensive internal damage caused by the violent assault of an adult male. The medical examiner described the injuries as gruesome and noted that they had occurred hours before the 911 call. Emmelie had also sustained severe head injuries, including a fractured skull, likely caused by being thrown against a hard surface or struck with a heavy object. The official cause of death was listed as a skull fracture. Benji Taylor was arrested at the scene. Initially charged with first-degree sexual assault, the charges were quickly upgraded to intentional homicide as the details of the case came to light. During questioning, Benji offered a bizarre and incoherent account of the night's events. He admitted to taking Emmelie to the basement, but claimed to have blacked out shortly after. According to him, the last thing he remembered was putting clothes into the washing machine. Benji said he had consumed 8 beers between 2 p.m. and midnight that day, and had also smoked marijuana with Amanda earlier in the evening. Despite his claims, the deputy who first arrived at the scene noted that Benji did not appear intoxicated. Benji insisted he had passed out multiple times that night, with each blackout lasting anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours. He claimed to have no memory of washing Emmeline's blood from the sink, an obvious attempt to hide evidence. Yet the physical and forensic evidence left no doubt about his guilt. Further investigation uncovered chilling details. Forensic analysis of Benji's phone revealed that he had been searching for explicit adult content between 2:52 a.m. and 3:17 a.m. His browsing history painted a disturbing picture, underscoring the depravity of his actions. The phone also recorded a 9-second call at 4:54 a.m. to a contact labeled home. Just 6 minutes later, Amanda's frantic call to 911 was placed. Investigators also found bloodstains on the bedding and clothing in the basement, further implicating Benji. Text messages recovered from Benji's phone added to the mounting evidence. At 5:14 a.m., he had sent a message to his brother. "I'm in deep trouble, show expletive. But don't worry, I'm about to die anyway." This message, sent shortly after the assault, suggested both an awareness of his guilt and a twisted attempt to shift blame or responsibility. The community was horrified by the brutality of the crime. News of Emmeline's death spread quickly, sparking outrage and heartbreak. On October 5, 2016, a petition was launched demanding Benji's public execution by hanging. The petition gained significant traction, amassing thousands of signatures within days. Though the petition was ultimately removed, it reflected the raw anger and grief felt by the community. Benji was detained at the South Central Regional Jail, and his bail was set at $2 million. Investigators continued to piece together the events of that night, determined to bring justice for Emmelie. Amanda, shattered by the loss of her daughter, struggled to process the betrayal by a man she had once trusted with her family. Emmelie Barringer's death was not just a tragedy, it was a horrifying reminder of the evil that can hide behind a facade of kindness. Her memory lives on as a symbol of innocence lost and as a call for vigilance and justice. For Amanda and her surviving children, the road to healing will be long, but Emmeline's love and light will forever remain in their hearts. In March 2019, after years of waiting, the case finally went to trial. The proceedings lasted for 5 days, during which Benji Taylor appeared in court wearing a bulletproof vest, helmet, and handcuffs. The courtroom was filled with tension as prosecutors and defense attorneys presented their arguments, witnesses testified, and evidence was reviewed in painstaking detail. The weight of the tragedy was palpable, but amidst the legal battles, a surprising number of people came forward to speak on Benji's behalf. The defense called several character witnesses to testify about Benji's past and his relationships with others. Among them were Benji's longtime friends, the girlfriend of his brother, his father, his mother, and even the mother of his young son. These individuals painted a picture of a man who, to them, seemed incapable of committing such a heinous act. The girlfriend of Benji's brother described him as supportive during her pregnancy and a stabilizing presence when her boyfriend faced health challenges. She emphasized that Benji had always been kind and never displayed any inappropriate sexual or aggressive behavior in her presence. Similarly, Brina Garnes, the mother of Benji's son, testified that he often played with their daughter and treated her children well. She noted that while Benji became quiet when he drank, he never showed signs of aggression or inappropriate behavior. "I could never, in my wildest dreams, imagine him doing what he's accused of," she said tearfully. "It just doesn't make sense." Benji's father took the stand and expressed unwavering support for his son. "I'm proud of Benji," he said, his voice steady despite the storm of allegations surrounding his child. He described Benji as a kind and caring man who had never exhibited cruelty, violence, or any deviant behavior. He recounted how, on the morning of October 3, 2016, his wife woke him, and they rushed to Amanda's house as quickly as possible. David Taylor claimed that Amanda was completely calm and did not display any anger as he drove her to the hospital. He stated that it was difficult to reconcile her behavior that morning with the accounts of her being extremely panicked and hysterical provided by police and paramedics. A recording of Amanda's anguished cries at the hospital was played in court, capturing her sobbing uncontrollably as she clung to her lifeless daughter. In response, Benji's mother, Rita Taylor, accused Amanda of faking hysteria. Rita doubled down on her belief in her son's innocence, recounting tender stories of how he cared for children in their family, including his own son and nephew. She admitted that Benji had struggled with substance use in the past, but insisted that even under the influence, he was never violent or inappropriate. He would just lie there quietly, she said, adding that her son could never commit the crimes he was accused of. However, Rita's testimony raised questions. On the morning of October 3, 2016, she received a phone call from Benji, during which he told her he loved her, before abruptly hanging up. When questioned by prosecutors about why Benji hadn't called 911 if he had found an injured child in his care, she struggled to answer. "If he saw that, yes, I believe he would have called," she said hesitantly. Prosecutors pressed further, asking why Amanda was the one who discovered the horrifying scene and called for help. The gaps in Rita's explanations only deepened the mystery surrounding her son's actions. One of the most damning pieces of evidence presented during the trial was an audio recording of Benji speaking to someone over the phone while he was already in custody. In the recording, Benji claimed that he didn't know the child was bleeding until someone else told him. Yet, in another recorded conversation, he chillingly admitted that he wasn't afraid of being punished for his actions. These contradictory statements undermined his defense and cast doubt on his narrative of events. In court, Benji attempted to defend himself, claiming he had been trying to bond with Emmelie and that he had serious intentions of marrying Amanda. He insisted that he wanted to build a family with her and was actively working to create a better relationship with her children. However, this portrayal of himself as a caring father figure was sharply contradicted by the overwhelming evidence of the brutality Emmelie suffered under his care. Throughout the trial, the prosecution meticulously laid out the case against Benji. They presented forensic evidence, including the bloodstains found in the basement and on Benji's clothing, as well as autopsy findings that confirmed Emmeli's injuries were consistent with violent sexual assault and blunt force trauma. The timeline of events, corroborated by phone records, witness testimonies, and Benji's own inconsistent statements, painted a chilling picture of what had occurred that night. Despite the testimonies in his favor, the jury was left with a mountain of undeniable evidence pointing to Benji's guilt. The brutality of the crime, coupled with the attempts to conceal it, shattered any doubts about his culpability. The defense's portrayal of Benji as a loving father figure was starkly contrasted by the horrific injuries inflicted on Emmelie, and no amount of character testimony could absolve him of the unthinkable act he had committed. The trial ended with Benji being found guilty on all charges. His conviction brought some semblance of justice for Emmelie, though no punishment could ever erase the pain and loss suffered by her family. For Amanda and her surviving children, the verdict was both a relief and a reminder of the nightmare that would forever haunt them. Emmeli's tragic death became a painful chapter in the community's history, sparking discussions about vigilance, trust, and the hidden dangers that can lurk behind seemingly normal facades. For Amanda, the memories of her vibrant, joyful daughter will always live on, a reminder of both the light Emmelie brought into the world and the darkness that took her away. The defendant also mentioned that every time he stepped into Emmeli's room, she would always greet him with a charming smile. The prosecution asked Benji whether such a demeanor was consistent with his denial of joking about hurting someone during sexual activity. He responded firmly stating that he would never allow himself to engage in such behavior. However, the prosecutor then presented Benji with screenshots of his own Facebook posts, which included numerous memes mocking and ridiculing themes of pain and sexuality. Notably, in June, Benji had bragged on his page stating, "I'll never apologize for being a sadist." This phrase seemed to resonate so strongly with him that he even made it his profile cover photo. Forensic experts uncovered significant bloodstains on the bed and floor in the basement. Tragically, Emile's diaper also contained blood, along with possible traces of male semen. Similar findings were revealed during the forensic examination of the child's genitalia for signs of sexual abuse. Moreover, the pants Benji wore on the fateful night were found to have traces of male biological fluids. The defense called Amanda's former neighbor, Barbara Kay, to testify. Barbara had lived near the victim at the time of the tragedy. Her bedroom in her apartment shared a wall with Amanda's home. On the night Emmelie was attacked, Barbara went to bed as usual, but was jolted awake around 12:30 a.m. by the sound of desperate crying and screaming from a child behind the wall. Startled, Kay got up, intending to call the police. However, the child's cries suddenly ceased, leading her to believe that nothing terrible had occurred. Convinced it was just a fleeting disturbance, she returned to bed. Throughout the trial, Benji's lawyer adamantly reiterated that his client was being accused without any substantive evidence or foundation. The defense argued that law enforcement should have investigated other potential suspects instead of focusing solely on Benji. However, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours before reaching a conclusion. The verdict was announced. Benjamin Taylor was found guilty of first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, and sexual assault by a guardian. The court proceedings continued with the jury being asked for their final recommendation. The foreperson stood to deliver the statement, "Your Honor, we have reached a verdict. Here is the jury's written decision." The judge directed the foreperson to hand over the verdict to the clerk, who then read it aloud. "We, the members of the jury, regarding the charges presented under the second count of the indictment, find the defendant, Benjamin Taylor, guilty of first-degree murder. Furthermore, we, the jury, unanimously recommend no mercy in sentencing. On the third count of the indictment, we also find the defendant guilty of the charges presented." With these words, the room fell silent, a collective tension hanging heavy in the air. The judge thanked the jury for their service and adjourned the court, setting the stage for the final sentencing phase. Benjamin Taylor, after weeks of intense scrutiny in court, faced his final judgment. The jury delivered its verdict with precision, going through each charge in the indictment one by one. First, he was found guilty of child abuse leading to death, a harrowing decision made with unanimous agreement among the jury members. However, in a surprising turn, Benjamin was acquitted of a lesser charge under the fourth count of the indictment. The court, following standard procedures, decided that this charge would no longer be considered since the more severe charges already carried their weight. When the fifth charge was addressed, sexual assault by a guardian or custodian, the jury unanimously declared Benjamin Taylor guilty once again. The foreperson handed the signed verdict forms to the judge, who carefully reviewed them. The courtroom was silent as the judge instructed the clerk to read the findings aloud. Each word felt heavy, echoing the gravity of the decisions made. After the verdict, the prosecution rose to make a sentencing recommendation. Given the nature of the crimes, they argued for the harshest possible penalty: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The jury's recommendation matched this sentiment, and the judge agreed. Benjamin Taylor was sentenced to life in prison for the intentional murder of a child due to abuse, with an additional 40 years for sexual assault of a minor under his care. A fine of $55,000 was imposed, reflecting the societal and legal condemnation of his actions. These sentences would be served consecutively, ensuring that Benjamin would never see freedom again. For the first time throughout the trial, Benjamin Taylor displayed visible emotion. During the proceedings, he had maintained a stoic demeanor, staring blankly ahead as horrifying evidence was presented against him. Even when the prosecution showed graphic images of Emile's beaten and lifeless body on the courtroom's large screen, Benjamin had not flinched or shed a tear. Yet the moment the sentence was announced, he broke down, tears streaming down his face as he sobbed uncontrollably. His breakdown was a stark contrast to the calm and calculated exterior he had maintained throughout the trial. Judge Tatterson, presiding over the case, summarized the jury's findings in his final remarks. Benjamin Taylor, you have been found guilty of the intentional murder of Emmelie Barringer, as outlined in count 2 of the indictment. You are also guilty of child abuse leading to death, as detailed in count 3, and sexual assault by a guardian or custodian. These crimes represent an egregious betrayal of trust and the most inhumane treatment of an innocent child. Justice has been served today, and the memory of Emmelie Barringer will not be forgotten. Family members of Emmelie, seated in the gallery, broke into tears of relief and sorrow. They later expressed to reporters outside the courtroom that for the first time since Emmeli's death, they felt that justice had been achieved. One family member stated, "Our little Emmelie can finally rest in peace, knowing her voice has been heard." The defense attorney, however, announced their intent to appeal the verdict. They claimed that the jury had overlooked critical evidence that could have exonerated Benjamin. This announcement sparked mixed reactions, with many questioning the validity of such claims, given the overwhelming forensic evidence presented during the trial. The case had a broader impact beyond the courtroom. In April 2017, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice signed into law a bill called Emmelee's Law, named in honor of Emmelie Barringer. This legislation significantly increased the penalties for child abuse, resulting in death, ensuring that perpetrators faced harsher consequences. The law was a direct response to the tragedy and aimed to prevent similar cases in the future. The community also came together to honor Emmelee's memory. On the evening of October 7, 2016, a large vigil was held in Pasadena, Maryland. Hundreds of people gathered, holding candles and wearing T-shirts with Emmelee's picture printed on them. Representatives from local organizations and community leaders spoke about the need for greater awareness and support for children in vulnerable situations. Emmelee's family, deeply touched by the outpouring of love, asked for privacy but expressed their heartfelt gratitude for the community's support. Emmelie was laid to rest on Sunday, October 16, 2016, at McCully Funeral Home in Pasadena. Her burial took place at Glen Haven Memorial Park in Glen Burnie, where a memorial was established in her honor. The ceremony was intimate, attended by close family and friends, all of whom vowed to keep her memory alive. The case of Benjamin Taylor has left an indelible mark on everyone who followed it. The sheer brutality of his crimes shocked the nation, leading many to question how someone could hide such a monstrous nature. Throughout the trial, those who knew Benjamin described him as a seemingly respectable individual. Even character witnesses called by the defense testified that he had always appeared to be a good person. Yet beneath this facade lay a man capable of unthinkable cruelty. As the case came to a close, many in the courtroom reflected on the horrifying nature of Emmelee's death. One observer remarked, "It's hard to believe a child as innocent and sweet as Emmelie could suffer such a terrible and painful end." This case is a reminder of the darkness that can exist behind closed doors. In the days following the verdict, social media was flooded with posts expressing outrage at Benjamin's actions and support for Emmelee's family. Videos discussing the case garnered thousands of comments, with many calling Benjamin a monster and the epitome of evil. A popular sentiment was the hope that Emmelee's story would inspire stricter laws and greater vigilance in protecting children from harm. For those who followed the trial, the verdict brought some measure of closure, though the pain of Emmelee's loss could never truly be erased. As the courtroom emptied for the final time, Emmelee's story served as both a heartbreaking tragedy and a call to action, a reminder that justice, though painful, is essential to healing. If you have thoughts about this case or want to share your support for Emmelee's family, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for updates on new investigations and stories that matter. Together we can ensure that voices like Emmelee's are never silenced.